We are live, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is the Cryptobeat news show where I go over all of the latest headlines from the week. We talk about what's going on in the crypto space, and I break it down in an easy way that's an easy way to understand and an overview, but then dive into a particular topic. And today I'm going to dive into the big Coinbase news. So this was an announcement from Brian Armstrong. I'll go into that a little bit later, but that's what I'm going to be digging into today. Welcome to everyone who is tuning in from home. Before I get started, I do want to remind you, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like me to read during the show, feel free to send them to my Cointree page. I will read them on air. I will probably bleep out any expletives. I know how crypto people can be. And if you wanted to sign up for my crypto newsletter, head over to naomibrockwell.com/cryptobeat, where I basically go down and break down all the news from the week in under 5 minutes, deliver it straight to your inbox. So go check it out. So I'm going to get started. Big news, giant bombshell that was just announced before I went live. So Bitmex is currently being targeted by the CFTC. This is giant news. This is one of the largest exchanges, and they technically don't offer services to US customers, and the CFTC is going after them. Now, the CFTC says that during the relevant period that is in question, Bitmex conducted trillions of dollars in digital asset derivatives transactions and earned fees worth more than $1 billion from transactions on its platform, and say that it served at least 85,000 US user customers. So there's a lot to digest here. I am not sure where to start. I'll go ahead and read what the CFTC has said, and then we'll break this down. So they said, as a derivatives market regulator that supports innovation and ingenuity, it is imperative that we actively police trading platform activity and remove the bad apples so that legitimate, law-abiding marketplaces can flourish, said CFTC Commissioner Brian Quintenz. He then goes on and says, we will not stand for any participant brazenly flouting our rules. I look forward to the successful resolution of this matter and the beneficial impact it will have in this market by holding those who deliberately ignore the law accountable. Now, what law are they talking about? Well, the law that they can't offer this to US customers, and basically Bitmex didn't have KYC for a long time. Bitmex implemented KYC, I think it was in June this year, I believe. And no, it was April this year. They implemented KYC. And prior to that, you could just go on and trade. Now, part of the allegation that, if you go down and read the documents, part of the allegation says that they used VPNs. They know that users use VPNs to access the site. And so therefore, Bitmex is liable. Yeah, right, Ubers. No flouting, everyone. So this is what it actually says. It says, during the relevant period, these people have been that US customers have used VPN to access the Bitmex platform. So, okay, I mean, that makes me immediately question what VPN service next. Like, what it seems right here is that the CFTC doesn't want people accessing certain trading platforms, certain trading tools, and it doesn't matter what country you're in, they're going to stop you from using it. And they do this because they say, well, we want to protect customers. You know, only accredited investors going to, access certain tools, and then other tools, they have to be regulated with us. We're protecting the user is their line. And it makes me wonder, like, if someone is going to the length of using an exchange not based in the US, and if it's not based in the US, it's not abiding by US rules, and if you block the IP addresses for US-based customers, the CFTC is basically saying, well, that's not good enough, and we will go after you. And if someone is going to use these services, like using a VPN, you've got to kind of, at the end of the day, maybe respect the individual's decision. That's my take on all of this. I think it's crazy that one of these giant exchanges is being targeted. Like, is Binance going to be targeted next because they don't have KYC on their platform? Are they going to be targeted and then sued by the CFTC for billions of dollars? Like, this could destroy Bitmex. Let's get that straight. This action, if the CFTC succeeds and people, let's see, there are lots of lawyers who are saying like, well, this absolutely could go through. So Stefan Pally is saying like, yes, they absolutely could succeed. If this succeeds, this could destroy Bitmex. And it makes me think like, it reminds me of the situation when Japan just, they didn't offer certain services to their customers. They didn't have futures, or the futures that they offered like through the 80s and 90s were really bad. And so everyone left and went to Singapore to trade this sort of derivative of these futures. And because they just weren't available in Japan, it's a similar situation, because right now there's so many different coins that are not offered in the US. Like, you compare Binance US to Binance, completely different assets that they list there. Binance has far more assets, far more pairings than Binance US. So people obviously are going to exchanges that are not based in the US. And you have to wonder, why are Binance US and Binance offering completely different assets? Well, it has a lot to do with the regulations in the US and what they're allowed to get approved, and all of the, the hoops they have to jump through to get these things listed. Like, it's a really big deal. And so people are literally just choosing to go to these places in other countries to trade on their exchanges, because there's a lot more to be offered there. Like the situation with, people left Japan and went and traded the Japanese stock market in Singapore, and it's kind of crazy because Japan just wasn't offering the services that people wanted. And it also makes me think like, it's a sad state of affairs when people have to leave your country to get access to the tools that they want exposure to, the financial tools and all of this. But also it goes further, like it makes you question the jurisdiction of the United States. So they're basically saying that if a US person, wants to trade this, then they're not allowed to. And they're using, like, we're talking about the ether, we're talking about the internet, which isn't like a physical location. Their servers, the servers for Bitmex are not in the United States. So it makes it like an analogy might be, if a US citizen decides that they want to smoke pot before, pot started to get legalized in the US, they would go to Amsterdam. Would the US government have the right to go into Amsterdam and arrest US citizens who happen to be there smoking pot? Because it's a similar situation right now. Where do we consider the internet to be located? And if you're using a VPN, if you're going to the trouble of using these things, it just seems like the US government has a lot of control over what the world has to do and the regulations that the world has to follow. They have KYC, even if they're blocking the IP addresses of US people, that's not enough. Even if, according to the IP addresses that are coming to their servers, they're coming from a US place, that's not enough. And now they're potentially up for billions of dollars in damages. It just seems like a crazy situation. It makes me wonder if like Binance is going to be targeted next, if a lot of these exchanges are going to be targeted. And it's a sad state of affairs for crypto traders, because they, at the end of the day, just lose options and lose the freedom to make up their own mind about where to spend their own money. So that's just something I wanted to talk about right at the start of this show, because it was breaking news as I went live. So it's pretty crazy. So I'm gonna move on. I've just got some quick bites that I want to go over with you all, news from the week, and then we'll dive into the Coinbase thing. So Overstock. There was the class action lawsuit that was filed last September against Overstock. And basically the plaintiffs were saying that they fraudulently pumped their stock. They said that they would offer this digital dividend to shareholders. And then right at the height, when this stock was really high, former CEO Patrick Byrne apparently sold all of his Overstock shares. This would have been worth around $100 million. And then there would be like a 6-month freeze on trading these digital dividends, which would make it impossible for short sellers to maintain their short position. Essentially, if they couldn't sell it, they'd be squeezed out and probably margin called. So the plaintiffs were saying this is all revenge, just because Patrick Byrne has made it his lifelong career choice to fight short sellers and naked short sellers. And basically the news is that the class action was thrown out. The judge says that because Overstock was transitioning from being an online retailer to a blockchain technology business, its Tier 0 subsidiary, via its Tier 0 subsidiary, there was a legitimate business purpose for issuing a digital currency. Digital security. And I want to just hone in on that for 1 second. So they said because they were transitioning from being a retailer into blockchain technology business, then the action of releasing this dividend, this digital dividend, was justified. Shouldn't every business have the right to issue a digital dividend if they want? Like, do they have to be in the blockchain industry before they're allowed to release a dividend? Am I allowed to, release dividends for my YouTube channel, digital dividends, just because I think the technology is superior to traditional financial technology, because I don't like the clearinghouses that are used in the traditional financial system? Like, I think blockchain is a superior technology. Like, the way the judge phrased this, it just seems very strange that they're saying because they're a blockchain technology company, it's justified. So I just thought I would mention that. If this gets to someone else decides to launch a digital dividend down the road, and investors decide that they don't like it, or shareholders decide that they don't like it, it may open up the room to say, well, you're not a blockchain company. What right do you have to use blockchain tech? Which seems very strange to me. The next news that I want to go over. So SEC orders Salt Lending to issue refunds to investors. They had a $47 million ICO back in 2017. Salt Lending, if you guys know what it is a super interesting company. It's a company that basically allows you to take out loans in US dollars if you use crypto as collateral. I mean, we're seeing that same idea all across the DeFi space right now. It's really interesting, but this was a company that was doing that. But because apparently when they were issuing their ICO to investors, well, you could make a return on this. So the SEC is considered a security, and now they have to reimburse all of the people who participated in the ICO. Basically, investors will have 3 months to file their claim, and the settlement means that basically Salt doesn't have to agree with the SEC's claim, but regardless, they are now registering their Salt token as a security. So again, another question there, like, who does the SEC think they're protecting here? Like, do they honestly think that there were a bunch of investors in Salt who didn't know what they were doing and therefore should be refunded? It seems that perhaps another prong of this could be that the SEC is getting a lot of money from this. They issue these fines on top of the reimbursement. Salt Lending has to pay these fines. So, each time the SEC cracks down, they get a chunk of money. At the end of the day, I think there's like this giant elephant in the room where there's a huge segment of the population that don't get access to traditional financial tools because they're limited to accredited investors only. And to be an accredited, you need millions of dollars, and then you can participate in these platforms. And everyone else just has to watch from the sidelines. And crypto was kind of this democratizing force that allowed people to participate in this. And I feel like most people in the crypto space, like, their biggest fear is, that the SEC will take those crypto tools out of their reach by going through these findings and saying, no, you are a security, and I just, I wonder why, like, if the SEC truly believes that they're protecting people, and if they truly believe that there are people who, the whole situation really bothers me at crypto, because it doesn't require these other, I think that, SEC, there are some good people in it, there are some bad people in it. There's one lady, and you should all check her out. I've actually done an interview with her before on my channel, and she talks about how the SEC should be just this checkbox. It shouldn't be like mandated, you have to go through this, you have to go the rigmarole, we have the right to shut you down if you don't. But it should be like an extra protection for consumers if they want to. Like, if they have a tick box from the SEC, then that it's gone through extra vetting, for example. So it could be like an extra security measure for consumers if they want to feel safer about their decisions, and if the SEC is in a position to identify which projects are safer than others. Some people would disagree with that, but she doesn't think that you know, she thinks that the SEC is sometimes overstepping in all of this and it's not being treated like this check mark. I tend to agree there, but you know, we'll see what happens there and how many people claim this money. I would be very disappointed if people were just claiming this money because perhaps, you know, they didn't make as much money as they wanted to. Like if you actually felt you were defrauded and, you know, this was a security and all this, like, I just think that a lot of people are out to take a chunk of other people's money. So just my 2 cents there. Very exciting news here. So, Gemini now offers confidential Zcash withdrawals, become the first regulated exchange to support shielded Zcash withdrawals. This is huge news because we've seen in the past giant crackdown on privacy coins. Exchanges are delisting them. Exchanges are not allowing privacy features of certain coins. And they're doing this because they want to make sure they're compliant with AML and CFT, which you know, stands for the financial funding of terrorism. So exchanges have been overly cautious, basically, in the past to make sure that they're abiding by these rules. And a lot of people were saying you can absolutely have KYC and all this, and it doesn't affect shielded transaction. You can still have private transactions on exchanges. Privacy coins should be encouraged because it's better and safer for the consumer. And you can still go through all this KYC process. But now Gemini is the first regulated exchange to support shielded Zcash withdrawals. So I think that's really cool. The head of regulatory relations at Electric Coin Company said that Zcash is compatible with robust AML CFT. So we'll see if that increases usage there. I really hope that it does. I really hope that other exchanges follow suit and start to add privacy coins back onto their list of accepted assets, etc. I think it's super important that we start embracing more financial privacy rather than less. I actually did an interesting with Secretary Summers a few months ago at CoinDesk, and I asked him directly, you know, what are you going to do to protect consumers' privacy and all this? And his answer was, I think there's too much privacy in crypto. You can watch that. I'll probably put it on my channel some stage, but it was just kind of, it just gives you an insight into how these regulators think. They're not interested in consumers' financial privacy, for example. It's disappointing, and so consumers need to make sure that they're looking out for themselves, essentially. The final bit of news that I want to talk about before we go into Facebook, KuKoin. So this is a Singapore exchange. They had an estimated $281 million worth of crypto stolen. This is an estimate that was put together by one of these crypto analytics, blockchain analytics companies. Was stolen from their hot wallet on Friday, and the KuKoin CEO says that it happened because one or more hackers obtained the private keys to the exchange's hot wallet. Whew. Okay, there's a lot of money. How people responded. So you have Ocean Protocol. They announced its old content. The Ethereum blockchain was to be suspended, and they hard forked the project. There were about, it would have come to about $8.6 million. So that is a significant chunk of all of this that they were able to save by doing this. And, you know, other places, like, for example, there are centralized exchanges that have blacklisted certain addresses. There are centralized exchanges that have frozen accounts of certain addresses as well. But a big chunk of the money has already been flipped actually on decentralized exchanges, because there's not much you can do on a decentralized exchange. So $7.5 million in Ethereum was on Kyber Network and Uniswap, both are DEXs. But it does seem that the hackers have been unable to flip the rest of the money, or launder the rest of the money, because they're trying to go through these centralized exchanges that have basically flagged the funds. And just for anyone, if you did have any money here, then just so you know, all customer funds are safe. They are covering it all via their insurance. So we see. It seems pretty good. All right, let's go into Coinbase. So just to kind of give you an outline, first of all, I'll basically explain the facts of what happened, the announcement from Armstrong, what he said in his announcement in the blog post, and then what the email that he sent to customers. And then I'm going to break down what people on the internet are saying about this. This is how we'll get started. So basically, they've offered this severance package to people who don't agree with their apolitical mission. Brian Armstrong wrote this blog and said, and I won't read it all, but I'll just give you some key points. Basically, they want to be laser focused on achieving mission because that's how he believes he can have the biggest impact on the world. He lays out how they want to do this. He wants to focus on what unites us, not what divides us. Also, it's pretty reasonable, like focusing on what unites us rather than what divides us is probably a very good life strategy, actually. So he basically goes on to explain this. There are many places a company can choose to allocate its limited time and resources. And I think that's a key point to talk about, like in context, as we're discussing both sides of this, is that there's opportunity cost to any decision that you make in life, right? So if you choose to focus all of your time on A, then it precludes you from focusing on B. You can't just expand the amount of time that you had. So you do have to make choices. He says there's never enough time to do anything. So we need to choose just what we want to see in the world and focus there. He says specifically, we don't advocate for any particular causes or candidates internally that are unrelated to our mission because it's a distraction from our mission. Even if we all agree something is a problem, we may not all agree on the solution. He also goes on to say, I believe most employees don't want to work in these divisive environments. They want to work winning, making progress towards an important mission. They want to be respected at work, have welcoming environment where they can contribute, have growth opportunities. They want the workplace to be a refuge from the division that is increasingly present in the world. So this is kind of the basic overview of what he's saying. And then he says, many companies never stand the test of time because they decide to dabble in unrelated efforts and distract and divide the workforce in the process. And I'll go into like what Paul Graham says about this later. But he then mentions shareholders and what's in the best interest of shareholders. And I will go into that in a second, but essentially we do have to remember that it's illegal for companies to do things that are outside the interest of shareholders. I know that that's a fact for publicly traded companies. Coinbase is gearing up for an IPO, but I'm pretty sure that it's the same for any company. You could be sued by your shareholders if you're not doing things that are in mission. So that is something to keep in mind here. But they said what is their mission? So Coinbase's mission is to create an open financial system for the world. This means we want to use cryptocurrency to bring economic freedom to people all over the world. This is difficult and important work, and every employee at Coinbase signed up because they're excited about this mission, which is an interesting point because it's kind of talking about managing expectations. If you sign up for a company, you think you're there to do a particular thing, and then the focus shifts. Suddenly half the company is doing something else and focusing something else, kind of saying that, let's allow people to do the job that they signed up for and make sure that the team is kind of united on that. So, it keeps going through. People have misinterpreted things. And then the basic rules going forward, and which have been in the past, but they haven't been enforced, but now they will be, debate causes. He says, we won't debate causes or political candidates internally. We won't expect the company to represent our personal beliefs externally. We won't assume negative intent or not have each other's back. We won't take on activism outside of our core mission at work. So that's kind of the crux of what he's saying there. He then goes on, releases this letter that basically says, listen, if you don't like this, we're going to give you a very generous severance package. And it is incredibly generous. So I'll go through this. You get, if you're uncomfortable with this new direction, you get 4 months severance for employees with less than 3 years tenure. You get 6 months severance for those who have been here for more than 3 years. You get 6 months COBRA. COBRA basically means that you have health insurance for the next 6 months. You have 7-year option exercise window, even if you've been here less than 2 years, pending final board approval. And he goes on to say, life is too short to work at a place where you're not excited. So let's kind of dive into the reaction of this because it's been pretty divided on the internet. So I'll start with some of the people who were super angry about this, right? So Cleve Mesador says, I woke up and it's the 1950s. Brian Armstrong is blatantly pushing Black and brown people out. Coinbase receives federal contracts and is not above scrutiny. Crypto is not your good old boys club. We will not vanish quietly without a fight. So people who immediately saw this as a racial issue and said, you know, there are certain races that are being pushed out right now. This is a point of view that's been shared by many people. Coinbase, Jomari Peterson, Coinbase is egregious. On their road to an IPO, they're trying to purge those who dissent with the CEO's disdain for activism. Your life doesn't matter. Someone else, Jamari also says, I put my money where my values lie, wherever possible and feasible. And Brian Armstrong wanted to make a statement that told me that Black lives and women equality don't really matter. They could say the words, but they don't want to do the work. Not ignorance, but malice. So people were taking this very strongly and saw this as an attack rather than their passivism and non-action as passive. They saw that as actually this very aggressive move. So there were other people who saw the complete opposite. So Paul Graham, he's a very famous VC, and he says, yet again, Brian Armstrong leads the way. I predict most successful companies will follow Coinbase's lead, if only because those who don't are less likely to succeed. And that sort of goes back to what Brian himself mentioned in his article, where he says that, you know, a lot of companies just don't stand the test of time because people are divided. Their attention is divided. They're not focused. The most successful people have this obsessive focus about things. And he says that, you know, unless we have that, we won't succeed on our mission. And then Paul Graham also says, you know, this isn't going to push away people with strong convictions. They're welcome to stay at the company. It's just going to push away those who like to browbeat their colleagues about them, i.e. the aggressively conventional minded. But people of that type tend to not be good at building things anyway, is what he said, which is an interesting distinction there, you know, saying that perhaps this isn't about people having strong views about something. Perhaps this is about internally debating, you're going against your teammates, causing a lot of friction, and, well, in his terms, browbeating colleagues about your strong convictions. So I thought that there were a couple of people who gave an interesting take who, let's see here. So Parker says here, you know, this will be rough for people who want an activist job on a tech person's salary, but life is about choices. If you want to get paid to be an activist, join a nonprofit, which is, you know, a good point, I think, that if you're going into a work environment with certain expectations that this is your job, and then you do a different job during work hours, perhaps you're not at the right job for something that will fulfill you, which is sort of what Brian is saying when he's offering the severance package. And then you have Preston Byrne, who also says here, people are really misinterpreting what Coinbase did. Coinbase didn't say it wouldn't be political. Coinbase didn't say it wouldn't be political. It didn't say its staff couldn't be political. It said that staff couldn't be political on companies' time, which is absolutely normal outside of Silicon Valley. And I think is another very interesting point, because it does seem, from what I've gathered from this, that people were using company time and being paid very high Silicon Valley wages, and then not actually doing the tasks that they were hired to do. Now, some people would say, well, there's more important stuff in life. You know, we need to be fighting all of this other stuff. Again, I also think it's about specialization. Is Coinbase the best organization to work for to achieve that aim? Well, they have a different mission. They have all of their structure focused around a different mission. They have all of the personnel hired focused around this specific mission. Their comparative advantage is that their entire structure is trying to be laser focused in a particular area. And you're saying, well, I'm going to work for that company and go do this thing while I'm there. I mean, I think that if that's something that's very important to people, as you know, there are a lot of issues outside of work that are important to people. You want to be able to participate in them. But if you want to use your work time to participate in them, you'd be better off going to an organization that specializes in this stuff, that actually, focuses all the resources, hires the correct personnel for achieving a certain thing. Like, it seems like a very different skill set. Hiring, going for social, fighting for social issues, and equality. And I mean, Brian Armstrong doesn't actually go into any of the things that any of the particular issues he had in mind. He just talks broadly. Any sort of activism, it's not what Coinbase is about. We're just going to stay apolitical during the workday. And if you want to do things on your own time, totally fine. Don't expect the company to start pursuing this direction of activism, though. We're laser focused on something else. So it seems like it's really dividing a lot of people. I know some people who are leaving Coinbase. I know some people who are staying and happy with the decision. Basically, employees have until October 7 to submit a form to begin the process of severance if this is what they wish to do. And Armstrong said, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with every aspect, but you should at least be able to disagree and commit to making this new direction a success. So, even if you don't agree that Coinbase should be laser focused, if you want to stay, he's basically saying, at least commit to it. As long as you're here, this is the goal we're committing to. This is what we should do. So it's pretty contentious there. Another point that I will raise is that, so Jason Calacanis, I think I pronounced that incorrectly, said, he makes a presumption here. You let me know if you think this is correct. Most folks want to work in an environment free from today's vitriolic politics. Sure, Coinbase will lose folks who are passionate about politics and social issues, but they will gain a massive influx of talent that wants to be about work and work only. I think there's something in that as well. Like, whenever I go on Twitter, it's sort of like this crazy, heightened, political, very angry place back and forth. And sometimes it's nice to go to a friend's house and, toast marshmallows and not talk about any of the vitriol that you saw on Twitter that day. Sometimes it's nice to take yourself away from that. Some people love that environment. They will debate issues all day long. Some people don't enjoy that. And I think it's important that there is a place for people who don't enjoy that not every workplace is expected to be okay with, vitriol and dissent. And you have to wonder, like Preston Byrne also brought up, how bad did it get at Coinbase for Brian Armstrong to have to create the severance package that he did, because it's a pretty overwhelmingly generous severance package. So you have to wonder what things were like in Coinbase to get them to that point, where they want to try to change this and discourage dissent and say, you can't do this on work time anymore. But I do think it's important. Some people they're not confrontational by nature. Perhaps they don't handle stress or debates the same way others do. They should be able to work as well, and there should be work environments that cater to them. So it's I can understand the point of view that people may want to use companies that support their ethics. I think that's valid. I often seek out companies that support my ethics for sure. And so by Coinbase taking this apolitical stance and saying we will not represent either side, some people are saying, well, that's a stand in itself, that you're not participating in all of this. But I do think there is something to say about a company being laser focused and making their work their mission. What is their comparative advantage? What are they best set up to achieve? Are they going to make the biggest difference focusing on something that they're not set up for, that their personnel are not hired, as experts in, that they don't have the right resources for, or are they going to be better for their current mission? And so I do just want to quickly talk about Coinbase's current mission. So the idea is this free and open financial system, a system that doesn't exclude certain people, a system that is available to everyone. We do live in a very unequal world. There are billions of unbanked people all over the world who don't have access to the global marketplace because they can't get bank accounts for whatever reason. And crypto, really, a lot of people got into crypto because they loved the idea of it being this financial democratizer, that people could finally have access to the global financial marketplace. They didn't have to have a bank account. So I think that honestly, if they succeed in that and branch out and are helping people get access to bank accounts who couldn't get access to them before, whether or not they're succeeding in the mission is an entirely different question. But just that mission itself, I think, is an important one that a lot of people in crypto share. And you can make up your own mind about who's doing that the best. But they also, I mean, one thing I will point out that they even reiterated in his statement. So he says, "We are an apolitical culture. We are also committed to making Coinbase a place that creates incredible job opportunities and a welcoming environment for people of every age, race, gender, sexual orientation, etc." So they're pretty explicit about not pushing anyone out based on their sexual orientation, on their gender, on their race, on their age. And they're pretty explicit about that, which is interesting that a lot of people have taken the tactic that, the point of view that, oh, well, they are pushing certain people out when they've explicitly said that they're not. They're just pushing out people who aren't happy there and who would not be happy in a culture where you're forced to do blockchain work every day and not activism. Another thing that I will mention is that even back in June, Brian Armstrong tweeted June 4th, "I want to unequivocally say that Black Lives Matter." So it is also interesting that there are a lot of people who are now saying that he's, forcing out people of color in the organization, and that he's, clearly this is what his tactic is. Like, it just seems to not fit if that's what he's tweeting about. That would be a conclusion that I would necessarily jump to. If I was working for an organization and they started supporting a political candidate and started using resources to support and advocate for a political candidate, I'd be pretty pissed off. Let's say that it was my candidate. Let's say that it was someone that I liked. Well, I guess that'd be a bit better. But, if I join a company because I'm excited about what they can achieve and I see them diverting resources to something that I didn't sign up for, I would want to get a say. I would want the expectations to be clear about what that company was doing from the outset, so that I could make a decision and say, yes, I like that they're diverting resources to that. That's an important cause. I will join them. I wouldn't want it just flung on me. So the fact that he's setting up the expectation and saying, we are not going to be political, I think is important, and then there's the other side of things where, what if I work for a company and suddenly they start advocating for a candidate that I don't like? That I'll work for a company like that was outwardly advocating for someone that I think is making the world a worse place. So I think apolitical behavior probably shouldn't be shunned by so many people. I think it's okay to keep your life compartmentalized. Some people would disagree and say there are certain things that overrun all of their lives. But yeah, at the end of the day, as Brian said, there are limited resources that we all have. And we have to choose where we put those resources. Are we going to put them, across all of the issues that we care about? Because we probably all care about a lot of things. We probably would want to devote a lot of time to everything. It's just not feasible for us to put in the time and energy to everything we care about, or are we going to make a real impact and focus our time and energy? So, I would love your take, everyone who's watching on this. What are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with Paul Graham's take that this is only going to be pushing out people who want to browbeat others about their political convictions and everything? Or do you take the point of view of some of the other people who are saying, well, this is going to push out all discussion and that's not what we're about, and we should be more open-minded? Like, it's an interesting it's an interesting situation. People are pretty angry about it. But that's all. I just wanted to keep you updated on what's going on. As I said before, I do have a Cryptobeat newsletter every week. Every Friday morning it goes out. I outline the news from the week, and you'll read it all. It takes under 5 minutes to get updated on the biggest news from the week. So if you want to sign up for that, head to naomibrockwell.com/cryptobeat. I also have a members only newsletter as well. And so that includes lots of exclusive content, exclusive videos for members. I do a lot of interviews. Like this week, I interviewed a BAT dev, which is pretty cool because BAT is kind of elusive to a lot of people. So I interviewed someone from the BAT team and also chatted to Brendan Eich over Twitter about the BAT token. So if you wanted access to that, head over to amybrockwell.com/memberships. You can sign up there. And tomorrow on the show, I'm chatting with Paul Bui, CEO of Edge Wallet. We do our weekly show, Coin Watch, which tomorrow we're talking about Basic Attention Token. We're talking about the Brave browser, the Basic Attention Token, how it works. I love that. I'm just going to be frank about that at the moment. It's super confusing to use, though. The user experience is not the best. I think it needs a lot of work. So Paul and I will dive into how it works, the history of it, the pros and cons and all of this. But make sure you tune in. That's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. All right, everyone. That is all. I'm going to head off now, but thank you for tuning in, and I'll chat to you later.